Hey folks, how are you? My name is Enrique Palafox and I'm here with Dacre Stoker. Dacre, how are you today?
I'm well, Enrique. How are you? Are you deep into the action? This stuff really is picking up now, isn't it?
Oh man, this week it was a lot of information, and next week it was a lot of information also. So how about if we keep it briefly and talk about everything in our general matter?
Yeah, we can do a summary, but I want to explain to make sure people get this is read this stuff thoroughly because
Mm,
there's a lot of information, a lot of things happening, and one of my favorite parts, which we'll get to, is this
yeah,
whole idea of the faith and science and believing in faith. Don't believe everything in science, and it's Bram Stoker's pure feelings that are coming out when he writes some of this stuff because it's a big issue in the Victorian life about new and emerging sciences that people don't believe in.
yeah.
And the whole point is you got to believe a little bit in science, but not everything. And that's the lesson Van Helsing and Seward are having to wrestle with while they're trying to figure out what happened to Lucy.
Wonderful. Bienvenidos una semana más. Ya estamos en la semana 21, week 21 for this is the one. Y una cantidad impresionante de información. Uno de los momentos favoritos de Dacre, donde, bueno, se pone en cuestionamiento que no todo es ciencia, ¿no? Bram otra vez en estos puntos medios de su vida, ¿no? También dice, hay otras cosas más. Y bueno, pues esto es lo que vamos a ver. Entonces, sin más, vamos a darle lleno. Ok, Dacre. Let's do this.
So, we get back to what's happening with Lucy. How is her conditioning? And
Yeah.
sadly, no matter what Van Helsing is doing with the blood transfusions, there's not any other real medicine that's going on. It's just replacing the blood, and it's not working. It's obvious that it's getting a little bit worse.
Yeah.
There is the presence of garlic still. They're trying to stop it, but as we said last week, for one reason or another, a housemaid takes the garlic off, some stupid mistake. But the fact is, they don't know what's causing the blood loss. They just know that Lucy is getting worse. And as this week progresses, some interesting visual things begin to show themselves.
Definitely. Ok, estamos aquí ya en una disyuntiva porque, bueno, vemos la caída de Lucy cada vez más fuerte, cada vez más hacia abajo. No hay manera de detenerlo por más esfuerzos que hayan hecho, como ya platicamos, hay errores que han sucedido estas cosas y por más que se hayan hecho transfusiones de sangre, por más que haya ajo, bueno, pues estamos en una postura donde, bueno, pues ya empiezan a suceder cosas interesantes.
Now we take a short break though, because nothing is straightforward with Bram. We think we're moving along, figuring out Lucy. And again, we take a diversion to find out that Renfield is up to his old games. And in this case, he's acting totally normal 1 minute and he gets completely crazy and violent, breaks out somehow, maybe with assistance, who knows, breaks out of his cell, gets out of the asylum, is running down the road, and physically has this battle with these guys driving this carriage. And you wonder, are these guys driving the carriages of the boxes, the dirt going to Dracula's? Is somehow Renfield fighting against the Count? Is he mad? Who knows? But we do know we've seen him go to the dark side, as violent with plenty of strength, which is not that unusual because, as we understand, people with mental problems sometimes take on incredible rage and violence and bring on the strength of 10 men, much like Bram Stoker says that a vampire does. So you begin to wonder, is Renfield going through a conversion himself? Is there some type of, vampire possessing his body? Who knows? What do you think? I mean, you love Renfield. I know he's one of your favorite characters.
I believe that it's a term called berserker, to going berserker, not to going like you remember when you and I were in Transylvania. They told us this old story of the armies who went like crazy. Maybe when you're mad, you're not thinking, so you go all the way, very like an animal, very
Yes.
very fiercely. And in my interpretation, maybe he's attacking those guys because maybe the count is removing his crates to another place because I don't know, and he doesn't want to for him to live.
Well, he's breaking down Renfield from being a human to an animal. That's why, as you just said this, you made me think he's exposing his animal powers, animal instinct.
Yeah.
But it's not completely gone because he comes back and he's very sorry.
Yeah.
So that's our brief interlude with Renfield for now.
Yeah. Another, as you well said, this is like a breathtaking from what's happening. Okay. Yeah. Bien. Ahora vemos, como dice Dacre, tenemos aquí una pausa muy interesante con Renfield, porque bueno, Renfield, bueno, se vuelve loco otra vez, ¿no? Tiene esta furia desbocada y va a atacar a estos que están cargando las cajas. Lo que estamos platicando es, hay un término que se llama berserker, que es perder la mente completamente, que bueno, pues eso tiene que ver con la locura, pero se convierten casi en animales, ¿no? Entonces es una ferocidad que no hay manera de parar. Entonces, bueno, pues eso por un lado, pero bueno, finalmente es un respiro de lo tonto que está pasando con Lucy.
Again, we'd like to go back to find out how Lucy's doing, but nope. We still have to find out about Jonathan and Mina, and they have gone to have a nice dinner with Peter Hawkins. Yeah. That's another subplot that definitely needs attention. Bram goes back to visit, and we find out, sadly, that he dies. You know, we knew he had gout. He couldn't go to Transylvania. He sent Jonathan in his place. Jonathan went there, and Jonathan, took the abuse of the Count and comes back, and now he dies suddenly, which you begin to wonder, why is this? And then you begin to more. Bram has inserted these weird little possibilities. Guess what? Peter Hawkins has no heirs, nobody to leave his estate to, nobody to leave his business to. He leaves it all to Mina and Jonathan. So it makes you think, is it possible that they coerced him? They changed the will? They killed him? It's Bram Stoker's way of simply deflecting the obvious that the major antagonist is Dracula. Maybe there's somebody else. We learn a little bit later that Arthur Holmwood's father dies. Oh, maybe he's bad. But back to this one. This is Bram's way of just making the reader guess and think and work their way through rather than make something straightforward. What's also really cool is we learned that Peter Hawkins knew Mina Murray when she was a little girl and Jonathan Harker. So you begin to wonder, did those two know each other when they were little kids? How did Peter Hawkins know them? And how did he die? It's a mystery, but we do know that these two newlyweds have ended up as owners of the Peter Hawkins law firm and a beautiful house in Exeter.
And it makes sense that when Mina went for searching for Jonathan, they came back to their place. I mean, it's very well written because it's a normal thing to do, to go with their closest relatives. In this case, no, I mean, it makes sense.
It does. It's like he's now better, and we're married. We want to come and see you, but he just dies. It throws this wrench in the works.
Okay. Bueno, vemos otra diversión también en la trama. Ahora tenemos el caso de Jonathan, que precisamente lo que estamos platicando es muy natural, otra vez lo que escribe Bram Stoker, ¿no? Porque bueno, ahora regresan ellos de donde estaban, en Budapest, recordemos, y resulta ser que van a visitar al señor Hawkins, y el señor Hawkins muere, y dejándoles herederos de todo eso. Al mismo tiempo pasa lo mismo, lo vamos a ver un poco más adelante con Arthur Holmwood y demás, pero bueno, son estos pequeños detalles que Bram nos deja. Acordémonos que él es abogado, entonces deja esos detalles que son sumamente claros, lo cual también le da realismo. Okay.
So now we do get to go back and see Lucy. She's getting worse. Her breathing is getting worse. Her gums are showing more teeth. It's obvious. They actually say her canine teeth are getting longer, and they make sure by selling telegrams that Arthur comes to get back in time to pay his respects. He's been having a difficult time himself because his father has just died, which means Arthur has become the Lord Godalming. He's wrestling with that grief. His friend Quincy comes to be his support. They get there just in time to say goodbye to Lucy, which, you know, when you think about it, these couple of chapters, it's like this arc in the book. Everyone's dying, lots of grief, lots of resolution that has to be determined here. But most importantly, the mystery is getting deeper because we have the death of Lucy, we have the funeral of both Lucy's mother and Lucy. And as we're all in this horrible grief, Bram Stoker inserts a little bit of dry Irish humor when he says the wife of the funeral undertaker says, "Oh, but she makes such a beautiful corpse," which to me, I can just see Bram Stoker at an Irish wake, somebody saying that, and it's stuck in his head. I've got to use that sometime in a story, and he uses it here. And it's a great relief, isn't it? It's just sort of a fun break from the morose, from the scariness. But then we get sobered up because now Van Helsing gets to take over, and he starts saying to Seward, "Okay, let's really we've got to figure this out."
Yeah.
But just before that, Bram does insert his being a lawyer, because what he points out, and they have to bring in the solicitors of Lucy Westenra's mother's estate, and Van Helsing says, not only am I a doctor, but I'm also a lawyer. We need to make sure that all the papers are in line, everything's right, because we don't want an inquiry, do we? We don't want an inquiry because the doctors from the police, they'll come and they'll see the pricks, and it'll all be terrible. So they get the estate in order, and he gets permission to read the papers, but they also reveal that Lord Godalming has received the full estate that Lucy Westenra's mother left, which, Enrique, it leaves an interesting, again, a deflection, because it makes you wonder, was there some shenanigans or something going on in the death? Because as Van Helsing says, if the mother had died after Lucy, not before, then Godalming wouldn't have got a penny. So the mother died first. How did she die? We're not really sure. A bad heart.
Yeah.
I don't think it's consequential, but it is one of these things that Bram the lawyer enters into the story because he has a lawyer's mind. He was asked to be a lawyer, and he said, "No, I'm going back to theater." So he had the brains, he had the education, and he uses it here in the story.
But nothing happens by chance in Bram's novel. As we have seen, he planted the seeds all over the place, way back from the beginning, and the death of the father of Arthur was told us a couple of months ago, so we were ready. These happenings are very well thought and very well written, and they are not happening just because they need to fit the story.
You're right. He does plan it out, but he inserts his strengths, the things he knows about well.
Yeah, definitely. Ok, aquí vemos sumamente interesante todos ya los procesos de la mente, por ejemplo, de Bram. Acordémonos que es abogado, ¿no? Entonces nos va dejando muchas evidencias por ahí que se tienen que ir resolviendo. Dacre nos está contando precisamente de las sutilezas en la abogacía, ¿no? Que dejan preguntas abiertas y que Bram las responde muy bien. Por ejemplo, cuando muere la mamá de Lucy, se sabe que Van Helsing, siendo abogado, él toma posesión y él tiene chance de ver lo que sucede, y bueno, se dan cuenta de que todo se le deja también a Lord Godalming, que por cierto ya es Lord porque su padre también ha muerto. Esa muerte es una serie de catástrofes que se vienen dando precisamente ahorita, donde todo se pone negro, todo es negro, es la tormenta, literal, todo el mundo está muriendo, la mamá de Lucy está muriendo, el papá de Lord Goldman está muriendo, y todo el mundo está recibiendo, acabamos de platicar de Jonathan. Entonces, bueno, pues aquí está un punto focal. Okay, so everybody is wealthy at this moment because, no?
At least with money, but
Yeah.
what they're lacking is knowledge and understanding. And
Yeah.
as we know in this story, knowledge is power. And
Yeah.
what they don't have is a lot of knowledge. Van Helsing is about to start to show it now because he's not straightforward, but he's treating Dr. Seward as his pupil again and the others. He said, okay, we now have to do sort of an experiment. We're going to go look at the coffin. Mm-hmm. Bring me a set of post-mortem knives. Why are we going to do that? He says, well, I want to cut off her head and take out her heart, which is like a slap in the face. She's just been had the funeral, and you're going to go and cut off her head. And that's a major shock. Whoa. Why is that? Trust me. He doesn't say why. Trust me.
Yeah.
Okay, because what he's getting at is he wants to show you the proof. Mm-hmm. He doesn't want to just tell you there's a vampire. Mm-hmm. It's this whole idea of science versus faith. You must observe and see for yourself before you believe. Don't just do what people tell you to do. Don't just read a science book. To have proper science process, you must experience, see it, test it, prove it. Yeah. So that's what we're getting to. Yep. And so now the whole idea gets into we've got to plan the trip to go to the cemetery. Trust me, let's go there. And while that is happening, we see that something interesting. Just like you said earlier, when one of the attendants took off the flowers around the neck, somebody stole the crucifix around Lucy's neck that Van Helsing put there for protection. And he goes to see the body before it goes in the coffin, and he realized it's gone. Now we're in trouble. So maybe the lady who was doing the funeral man took the gold, so he's richer. But he says now it's too late.
Yeah.
You and I and people who understand vampirism know that is to keep her down, keep her in her place. Now the strategy changes. Now Van Helsing knows this is a different game. Yeah. So they still have to plan to go and see the coffin in Highgate Cemetery, but it's going to be different. And sure enough, it is, because they start reading in the newspapers that there is a bloofer lady, a beautiful lady who is scaring children and even maybe taking blood from children. It's in the newspapers. It's in the different real live newspapers. So this is where it gets deeper this week. Is it's now out in the open that this Lucy is walking around, and as they say, the children are playing Red Riding Hood because they had the wolf first come from the zoo. Now we've got the bloofer lady. So, this can't be that serious. It can't be so bad. But there's a group of people that know it really is.
It's happening.
It's coming.
Yeah.
It's really coming.
Yeah. And what almost got my attention from this part of the bloofer lady, it's a very similar image of so many characters in all folklore tradition all over the world. In Mexico, we have La Llorona, which is a very, very similar figure dressed in white who haunts in the nights. So it's then again, I believe Bram took a very powerful image and uses it in his novel.
Absolutely. Go ahead and translate. Yep.
Okay. Vemos aquí, bueno, ya Van Helsing tomando las riendas del juego después de que ellos se quedan con dinero, ¿no? Van Helsing se queda con las riendas del juego porque él sí es el único que sabe qué es lo que está pasando, él es el que tiene las respuestas, ¿no? Y a pesar de que los métodos son poco ortodoxos y van a ser terribles, él les pide que tengan confianza en él, les dice, tenemos que hacer esto porque, bueno, si bien los otros están devastados y piensan que ya ha muerto, no, él les dice, no, perdón, esto no, esto tenemos que ir al cementerio, tenemos que ir a hacer esto, tenemos que tomar otro camino, porque bueno, el crucifijo fue arrebatado, ¿no? Del cuerpo de Lucy. Entonces, bueno, pues hay que tomar otro camino, hay que tomar otras alternativas, y ahí es donde viene. Y precisamente le comentaba yo a Dacre que, bueno, esta figura de The Blue Fair Lady, que además sale en los periódicos y empieza a llamar la atención, que está llamando, espantando a los niños, bueno, tiene un símil en el folclore, porque, bueno, estas figuras fantasmales, ¿no? De noche vestidas de blanco que aterran, bueno, pues es muy parecida a la Llorona de México. Okay, how about the money? Sorry about that. I don't want to miss this thought. The money will be very useful at the end of the novel, because they need to take trains. They need to spend a lot of money chasing whatever they need to chase. So at this moment, to have this heritage from each one of them, it will be very handy. So then again, Bram is planted another seeds from what's coming.
That's a great point. So before we get to go to Hampstead Heath and Highgate Cemetery, there's more drama unfolding, which I think is fantastic. Remember, Mina and Jonathan have gone to visit Hawkins. He's died. Jonathan is still recovering emotionally from his experience in the castle, and they go for a ride, the two of them, and they go to Piccadilly Circus, and Jonathan sees this younger version of Count Dracula, and he freaks out. And it's like he goes into almost an hysterics, and he kind of a dream state, and he falls asleep. And Mina wonders, oh my God, what happened? Has he had a relapse? Has he had a brain fever? Is it true? Was it so emotional that he's had, post-traumatic stress syndrome? But it brings us back to, where is Dracula? He's now young again. Has he been drinking Lucy's blood? And that's the final one. Where is he looking for new victims? So we're reminded of that. The next thing we're reminded of is Mina, at this point, she has her first meeting with Van Helsing. We're halfway through the story, and Mina, who is the one who we see now become the star, she's the one that brings her letters with Lucy that gives to Van Helsing. Her journal that Jonathan gave her, shorthanded. She and Van Helsing put their minds together through the phonograph, through the typewriting that translates the shorthand. It now comes to this point where there's a clearer path forward than anywhere else in this book, that the two main brains of the story are now together as one. Van Helsing recognizes her as a modern woman, recognizes her as very smart, and now we know that the powers have aligned. These two powers are now aligned against Dracula, and they better watch out. However, also at this one little point, we see a great humanity of Van Helsing. Just as he begins to have his power with Mina, he has almost this crazy, they call it the king laugh speech, where he kind of breaks down all the stress that he has had in the story, shows that he's human after all. It's like, oh God. And I think we identify with him a little bit better, because he's not just the mighty Van Helsing that knows everything. He's human, as is Mina, but together they are really strong.
Wow.
What do you think?
I believe this is a very powerful thing that you're saying, because in some ways we are closing the first half of the book with all these dyings and all these happenings, and we are entering in a new narrative, and with these characters taking place. And the break of Van Helsing, maybe it I mean, I can relate with him because he's very passionate, and we just talk about he is searching for knowledge, and that laughter maybe is that like a conclusion that I mean it. He is going for the knowledge. He's looking for power also.
No, knowledge is power, as you know.
So,
That's it. And now he's got more power because he's got the ability to harness Mina. She's transcribed Jonathan's notes from the castle. They've now got most of the information they need to then convince Seward and Holmwood and Morris, guys, this is what's here. It's a vampire, and now I'm going to prove it. Soon they're going to go back to this Hampstead Heath and the Highgate Cemetery and prove it, but they've got to have that knowledge.
Ya, ok. Y bueno, finalmente vemos aquí ya una parte muy interesante que es donde se juntan ya los dos grandes poderes de la novela, que van a ser las dos mentes brillantes, que es Van Helsing por un lado, que ya lo conocemos, pero por el otro lado se incorpora Mina, que va a ser una figura fundamental, porque ella es la que trae los diarios, ella es la que trae el diario de Jonathan Harker, ella es la que transcribe, ella es la que conoce todo, es la que conoce a Lucy, es la que amalgama todo, y Van Helsing la reconoce, como dice Dacre, como esta nueva mujer, pues que además es muy contemporánea, ¿no? Una mujer muy echada para adelante, ¿no? Y que juntos van a ser en realidad la contraparte de Drácula. Mismo Drácula que precisamente Jonathan tiene una recaída muy fuerte porque lo ve en Piccadilly, lo reconoce que es mucho más joven. Entonces ahí él literal se vuelve histérico, se vuelve loco y Mina, y es donde toma también ese rol predominante, ¿no? Porque ella sabe que el esposo puede estar teniendo algún estrés postraumático o algo por el estilo. Entonces es ahí donde Mina también es un call to action, ¿no? Para que ella tome también la ventaja, ¿ok?
So this section that I'm going to explain now is a very large social and scientific issue during the late 1800s in the Victorian era when new sciences were being introduced. Remember, Charles Darwin published Origin of the Species, 1859. Electricity is being introduced. ESP, the seances, the occult, all these things are percolating beneath the fine society where people look very upright and prim and proper. But underneath, there's all this interest in things. And Bram's, and I'm sure this is conversations Bram has had with any of his three brothers. They're all scientists. My great-grandfather George, and same with Richard Stoker and Thornley Stoker, all scientists. And they say this is Van Helsing to Seward. Do you not think there are things which you cannot understand, but yet they are? That some people see things that others cannot, but they are things old and new which must not be contemplated by men's eyes only. And it is the fault of our science that wants to explain it all. He's saying that we must have faith in science and we must have proof, but don't only believe in science. There are other things like superstition and myth and faith in good and faith in religion, because religion is just like a superstition. It's a belief in things you can't see. So it is. Now we're going to enter into the best quote in the book, and that is where Bram Stoker enters the same discussion with his neighbor, Mark Twain. And he says, I want you to believe, Dr. Seward. What do you mean believe? You must believe. Believe in things that you cannot. Believe in things you cannot. Let me illustrate. I once heard of an American, that's Mark Twain, who so defined faith, that faculty which enables us to believe things that we know to be untrue. Now, Enrique, that's an actual quote from a book that Mark Twain wrote called Round the Equator. And so Bram actually helped him sell that book. He was the agent for that book. So he knows that quote, and he uses it in Drácula for his explanation of faith. You to believe in things that you cannot. And that is the essence of this whole part of the story. Dr. Seward cannot believe where the blood's going. I can't see where it's going. I don't know. This is
Wow.
a major lesson in science
Yes.
and faith in this part of the story.
Yes, it's important. Let me translate this. Tenemos aquí una lección muy importante. No quiero que se me olvide porque precisamente como dice Dacre, este es un punto central de la novela, ¿no? Porque un poco la moraleja es que tienes que abrir los ojos y sí, claro, tener tu fe en la ciencia, pero al mismo tiempo estar abierto a ver otras cosas, ¿no? Es mucho lo que le dice el doctor Van Helsing a Seward, que lo trata como un pupilo de nuevo, le dice, claro, tienes que tener esto, pero tienes que tener la cabeza mucho más abierta, ¿no? Porque hay muchas cosas. Recordemos que es un momento en donde, si bien ya se había, ¿cómo se llama?, desarrollado la electricidad, ¿no? Y demás, hay muchas cosas de superstición, hay muchas cosas de misticismo, hay muchas cosas de folclore que todavía están por ahí, y precisamente lo que Van Helsing dice es que tienes que ver, tienes que tener pruebas, ¿no? De estas cosas que sí existen y que son difíciles de creer. Okay.
And one more thing, just before we wind this down. In the same section, we actually have Bram Stoker reading a newspaper from New York that's in his notes. And it mentions Charles Darwin, who discovered the vampire bat in South America. And Bram takes those same words from Charles Darwin in the newspaper, and he inserts them in Quincy Morris. And when Quincy Morris hears these guys talking about the potential of a vampire, he says, oh, yes, when I was in South America, these big vampire bats came out of the trees and drank so much blood from one of my horses that I had to shoot it. And the guys go, oh, that's in the natural world. So here we go. One guy has seen one with his own eyeballs. He's seen the proof of it. And then we get to the end and said, how do you take all this information? Where do you think these little marks, in the child came from?
Yeah.
They were made by Miss Lucy. And that's the game changer. They got the answer. It's a long way to get there. And that convinces these guys, we now need to go look in the coffin to see what Miss Lucy is like. And of course, as we fast forward, we get there, they go to the cemetery, they open it up, and it's empty. And now again, they have another lesson. How did it become empty? Did somebody open up with another key?
New questions, yeah.
You want to see where she come? Step outside. They go and hide. And that's where they see, at the end of this chapter, they see this sort of woman in white going quickly, this ghostly apparition that they all see with their own eyes. They finally believe it when it's over, this white streak. And this is where we sort of end this part with, I guess there's going to have to be another expedition to come back here at another time. And we're left in great suspense, but now we have more proof. We finally have proof that Miss Lucy is not mortal. She's not laying in the coffin as she was supposed to be. Somehow she got out, and she could very easily be the Blue Fur Lady.
Okay. Tenemos dos textos que son muy importantes, que son referidos aquí por Bram Stoker. Uno de ellos es de Mark Twain, ¿no? Precisamente donde se hablan de todas estas cuestiones, y el otro es de Darwin, donde también precisamente, por ejemplo, aquí Quincy Morris, ya habíamos hablado de eso, pero hace una referencia a ese libro, ¿no? Cuando dice, bueno, de dónde habrían salido, ¿no? Las punzadas del cuello. Bueno, se empiezan a hablar de vampiros y Quincy es el que dice, claro, cuando yo viajé a Sudamérica, ¿no? Estos grandes vampiros se mataron a mi caballo, ¿no? De tomar tanta sangre, le tuvimos que disparar. Entonces, aquí otra vez Bram es bien importante que retoma textos de otros autores, en el caso de Mark Twain, ¿no? Que Mark Twain, recordemos que era su amigo, y él funcionó, como dijo Dacre hace rato, él funcionó como el agente de ese libro para ayudarlo, y Stoker se queda con una de esas frases, ¿no? Para decir que hay que ver mucho más allá, porque recordemos que Van Helsing está otra vez siendo el maestro del pupilo de Seward, y entonces lo lleva a las pruebas, lo lleva a decir que tiene que verlo, ¿no? Y entonces por eso es que terminan ellos yendo al cementerio, ¿no? A decirle, oye, no me creas a mí, no me creas lo que te estoy diciendo, ¿no? Vamos a verlo con tus propios ojos, y es ahí que van a ver a la Blue Fur Lady, precisamente a Lucy, y se esconden, ¿no? Bueno, pues ven que el ataúd está vacío, Entonces, desesperados, ¿qué es lo que pasa? Bueno, vamos a escondernos y ven pasar a la figura fantasmal, ¿no? Entonces ahí ya no cabe duda, ¿no? De que es el ataque de Lucy convertida en la Blue Fair Lady y que tienen que regresar una noche después para acabar con esto. Ok.
So there we go. We've had a huge week, and we're going to have another big one.
Big
So
one.
enjoy your reading. Keep the lights on because
Yeah.
it's now getting serious.
Yeah, this is terrifying. This is terrifying. Thank you, Dacre.
Okay. See you next week. Bye-bye.
Aquí terminamos ya. Esta semana estuvo complicada, pero esperen la siguiente, como dice Dacre, mantengan la luz prendida y continúen con la lectura. Nos vemos la siguiente. Gracias. Hasta pronto.
Bye-bye.
Chao.